Well, my name is Phil Stafford, and I refer to myself as the instigator of the Co-Design Commons, but you'll learn more about that as we go along. But I'm so pleased that you've come today to help the launch of this new project called the Co-Design Commons, and also celebrate what has been a year now of development for the Blooming Zone Initiative. And we're going to be spending the morning focusing on some Blue Zone issues. We're going to be spending the afternoon, if you stick around, as I hope you do, helping set an agenda for the coming months for the Co-Design Commons to help design a future for aging in Monroe County. And so the work you do today is very important. The Blooming Zone Initiative and the Co-Design Commons, they're about our individual futures, but also about our collective futures. Creating a community in which everyone can thrive and look forward not just to a long lifespan, but a long health span. There's a big difference there. So our morning is devoted to Blooming Zones with some wonderful representation from that organization, both locally and nationally. And the afternoon to the Co-Design Commons. The whole day to the bridge that unites the two in collaboration for healthy futures for all ages. The bridge is due in large part to leadership at Indiana University, which included aging as an important element in the 2030 strategic plan. I've been around this community for 45 years, and this is the first time I've seen the word aging in the IU strategic plan. So that tells you something really important about a turn that the university is making towards communities for all ages and research that addresses all ages. The Office of the Vice Provost for Research specifically, and the creation of the Aging Research Network, the Age-Friendly University Task Force, that I can talk to you more about if you're interested, and funding for the Co-Design Commons, which enables all of us to come together today to work. The most important question on your mind might be, how is one little bathroom going to serve the needs of 50 people? And we've solved that problem through a schedule adjustment, which means is you go by your own schedule, okay? You set your own agenda when it comes to using the bathroom. The bathroom is in the back room there. This used to be the Buckle, kind of a boutique clothing store. And now we're in kind of the dead zone on this end of the mall, along with the Arts Alliance and the great, incredible community fiber arts store. So it's really a wonderful development and a terrific use for semi-public space in our community for these kinds of things. And so we encourage you to appreciate the folks from the mall for helping support. And I don't know what rent is being paid, but I think we're probably getting a pretty significant discount. The Co-Design Commons is here one day a week on Fridays, and Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, the space is occupied by the Endwright East Active Living Community Center, sponsored by the city and the Area 10 Agency on Aging. So you can explore this space as we go along throughout the day. So the bathroom situation, whenever you feel nature call, the bathroom is there. If you'd like a fancier bathroom, then the Target is an option. Of course, the fanciest and largest bathroom is down in the food court. So that's a long ways away. But that one may be the most accessible, maybe down in the food court there, I'm not sure. All three spaces are basically accessible, so that's good news. Am I missing anything, Cynthia or Julie, regarding logistics? We're going to go through the agenda in just a minute here with another introduction. Basically, our goals for the day are to gather, take advantage of the good company that we have in bringing together a wide, diverse group of people who are very interesting and committed to personal health and community health. to connect with each other. So we really hope you get to know each other a little bit, and there'll be some opportunities to do that. And also the best lubricant of all for that purpose is food. And we're providing that at noon with help from One World and the funding that we have. And so we have a vegetarian taco bar at noon, which we all hope you take advantage of. And sit next to somebody you don't know and get to know them. Another goal is to learn new things about blooming zones, the whole concept of blue zones, and old things through the storytelling that we'll be doing this afternoon to revisit the past in some respects in terms of our own personal experiences. That gives us an opportunity to reflect, which is a process where we can integrate the new and the old in the context of our individual lives and the life of our community. And lastly, to act, or at least imagine action for yourself and for the community. Action that can lead to a healthier community. Are there any questions before we start? Anything I missed? Cynthia Schultz, the founder of Blooming Zones.
Yeah, thank you, Cynthia Schultz. I just wanted to say there's also coffee and beverages for those who came in, and we brought the snacks from the last event, fruit, little nibblies, so if you're hungry, just feel free to get up quietly and go over there and help yourself.
We hope that you got a folder, and the folder has a letter of welcome, an explanation for this event. And it looks like this. Your agenda is in the folder. Most of them are on the right. There's a few that were in the agenda. I noticed it's on the left. There are two information pieces about the Co-Design Commons and about blooming zones that are very interesting and worthwhile. This one I personally consider very important. It's a request to be on the mailing list for the Co-Design Commons. It reads a little bit like an RBA approval, and one of the reasons it reads like that is because you're also giving your permission to be contacted by the Co-Design Commons should a research opportunity related to some of these issues be available for you to participate in. So one of our goals is to really expand the engagement of older adults and people in the community who sometimes don't get involved enough with research going on at Indiana University. So I really encourage you to fill out the permission slip on the back. We do a lot of communication by email with the Co-Design Commons. And then there's a plastic tub out front where you can just drop this in on your way out. So I really appreciate that. There's also a description of a major project that's going on at the Co-Design Commons with funding from the Indiana Arts Commission and the expertise of Julie Hill, kind of our resident artist here. It's called the Earthwalk Paint Project, and it's had a soft launch itself, learning a little bit about elevating skills involved with painting, but it gets more of a formal launch over the summer, and is a really terrific project. So I encourage you to read about that. But you have an agenda. We'll stick as much as we can to that agenda, kind of give you an idea of what to expect for the day. And with that, yes, I'm going to close and turn it over to someone who is going to introduce one of our special guests. Does anybody know who's doing the introduction? Am I? Huh? I am? Oh, I get to introduce the mayor. Well, I've known that person for quite a long time and admired her work with Habitat for Humanity, Center for Rural Engagement, and now as mayor of Bloomington. So we're very privileged to have Carrie Thompson here today to welcome us.
Thanks, Phil. That was the best spontaneous introduction I've ever received. Appreciate you carrying us through on the fly, Phil. And I have to say that was the most thorough outline of bathroom availability that I've ever heard. So thanks for that, Phil, caring for all of our needs and our health here in Bloomington. I am Mayor Carrie Thompson, and that's sometimes hard to say altogether. And it is my great honor to lead our city and to be in the great company of visionaries like Phil and Cynthia, who are getting things like blooming zones going for us. It is so great to see everyone today, and I thank you for being here to learn more about Blue Zones and what they do. If there's one thing I know about Bloomington, it's that we are a city that really cares. We care for one another. We value kindness and compassion, hospitality, and open-mindedness. And interpersonal connection is so critical to how we live and how we thrive as human beings. And that's reflected in each and every neighborhood that I spend time in. And getting to know our neighbors by name, by face, as sometimes we only started to do during COVID, even knowing their stories, because we were around our neighborhoods a little bit more during that time. We are a city that shows up when someone's porch needs to be shoveled, and we check in on one another just because. And that is the sense of connection that actually leads to better health. And as surprising as it is to some, that is what the Blue Zones research has shown us. And that is the heart of this project, especially for me, as I lead with a vision of having a city where everyone is not only welcome, but where they can find this higher standard, this sense of belonging, true belonging. And that's belonging is what helps people really live longer and healthier lives. What helps us know that we have a purpose and that our gifts are needed in the community to which we do belong. As you know, through the Blue Zones Project, most Americans are spending their whole lives, about 90% of our lives, within 20 miles of where we live. And that means that your neighborhood, your streets, your access to parks, your safe sidewalks, and people who know you all matter very much. And it's no secret that other countries outpace the United States in life expectancy. But the Blue Zones Project asks that question that we should all be asking. What can we do differently, even here in the United States, to create better outcomes for everyone? And the good news is Bloomington is already doing a lot of it just by being who we are. You know, a couple summers ago, I was fortunate enough to travel to Costa Rica with my children and my siblings and their children and my parents, who are thankfully still living and still healthy enough to walk trails in Costa Rica. We ended up going to a very special restaurant, which was a restaurant that celebrated the fact that we were in the middle of a blue zone. And it was a restaurant that curated the menu to be a blue zone menu and educated us about what it means to be a blue zone. And it's not surprising to me that this little village that we were in had all of the amenities of connection, even welcoming strangers and tourists in, and that it really felt like a place I would want to live. And it happened to be a blue zone. And I think that is what we are looking to in Bloomington, and that is why I am an enthusiastic supporter of this Blue Zone initiative, because we in Bloomington already value walkability, connectedness, green spaces, and strong local food systems. And I know some of you were at the Farm Stop just this morning, which is one of our best examples of a celebration of accessible local food. We already have communities that support one another in visible, everyday ways. The Blue Zones Project doesn't ask us to reinvent who we are. It just helps us amplify it. And it helps us do it in a more focused way. Blue Zone simply offers us a new lens and a shared language to talk about this. The process is about listening and learning and asking how can we take what we already do well and do it even better. I'm proud that Bloomington is a place that shows up for this conversation and that we're open to ideas and that we're grounded in care for one another. And on that note, it is my great pleasure to introduce Margaret Brown. Margaret is a lifelong community well-being advocate with more than 20 years experience. And before joining Blue Zones, Margaret spent more than 10 years working directly with community coalitions, federally qualified health centers, public health, and health systems to develop and implement community-based health improvement strategies. She's worked with organizations such as Habitat for Humanity, hooray, Dartmouth, Hitchcock Medical Center, and Vanderbilt University Medical Center. Margaret's passionate about empowering communities and individuals to take ownership of their health and creating cross-sector partnerships that make that all possible. Margaret holds a Master's of Science in Healthcare Leadership from Dartmouth College and a bachelor's degree in English Literature from Francis Marion University. Please join me in giving a warm Bloomington welcome to Margaret.
Carrie, I didn't realize until this morning we had Habitat in common. What a fantastic, it literally set me on my journey. I will tell you, I had not always wanted to be in healthcare, public health, or community health, or any of the things that are associated with that, because I wanted to be a story writer. I wanted to be, an author. My first job out of college actually was in publishing. And what I loved about my job in publishing is every single day I would sit on the phone and talk to people who were interested in publishing their stories, either real stories about their life or fictional stories, or music books or poetry or whatever it was that they were looking to publish. And I just made so many friends. I was just so fascinated by even the guy down in Hawaii, I think he published 24 books on AA. He was also a great friend. We had daily conversations. But my point being is that is what fascinated me. But then I had to move and closer to my family, take care of my family. And my first job moving back to my hometown was actually with Habitat. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. They hired me to raise money, to build homes. But as I was doing that, I also had to meet and interview all the families who are applying to become new homeowners. And when you go into the homes of the people who are applying to be new homeowners, you're heartbroken because you can't give every single one of them a new home. But you want to. But you also see all the things that they need in addition to just a new home. They need wheelchair accessibility. They need food. They need electricity. They need running water. They need basic health care. All of those things are the things I got to see, and I just started case managing and saying, oh, I know somebody, you should go here. I know this organization, let me call them, I want to get you in. Let me find this fund, let me find this bit of money, and that's how I got onto my journey in healthcare and healthcare access. So I want to say, this past few days, I've gotten to tour around Bloomington, meet a lot of fascinating people. I bet you guys did not know you won the lottery when you picked Bloomington as your city, or if you were lucky enough to just be born here. It is such a phenomenal space and so many special people. I want to thank you all for the welcome, the volunteers that have helped coordinate these events. I want to talk a little bit today about Blue Zones, but I want to start first with a little quiz. And this quiz actually comes from the University of Minnesota Public Health. And it used to be on their website, but it's not on their website anymore. So I don't know where it went, but I'm glad that I have it, and it's in my phone to use forever. And it's going to be a quiz, a little participatory project here. And you've got two jobs. One, I want you to raise your hand if the question I ask applies to you. And then secondly, this is a little bit of a challenge. You got to remember how many times you raised your hand. So, find a way to keep track. We got about 7 or 8 questions here. So the first question is, raise your hand if you sleep 7 hours, 5 nights a week. Pretty good. By the way, I didn't tell you the purpose of this quiz. It's supposed to determine within about a 15% of margin how long each of you will live. So we're going to tally it up at the end, so definitely keep track, okay? Number 2, raise your hand if you move, on average, 45 minutes a day. All right. Raise your hand if you eat 3 honest, gotta be real honest, servings of fruits and vegetables every day. Ketchup does not count. Grape jelly does not count. Excellent. The next one can be a little tricky. A lot of assumptions come with this next question. But raise your hand if you have abstained from unprotected sex with strangers. I'm not seeing 100%, guys. Close your eyes. Notice there wasn't a time frame on that, right? Yeah. All right, raise your hand if you have at least 3 good friends. 1 that you can have a meaningful conversation with, 1 that you can call on a bad day, and 3 you actually like them. I know that to be true here because everywhere I've gone, there's just such these amazing friendships everywhere that I've been this week, and it's incredible. Raise your hand if you belong to a faith-based community, and that can be any denomination, whatever faith looks like for you, and you attend 4 times a month. Raise your hand if you have not smoked in 5 years. There you go. Never smoked. All right, final question. Raise your hand if you desire and you believe that you have the health to live to age 90. Maybe you're already there. Yes. That is one of the most important questions that you can ask someone, and I'll circle back to this in a moment. But this question, Paul Costas from the National Institutes of Aging actually says, it's such an important question and a great predictor of your true life expectancy, because you know a couple of things that your provider does not know. You also know a couple of things that maybe even your friends do not know, and that is, you know how you lived, honestly. You know how you've lived. You know those traits and habits that that maybe no one else knows that you have, that you've done or have. You know how you feel today. You know how you're coming to that question today. And you also know how you are going to tend to live from this point forward. And so if you're raising your hand and you truly believe you have the health and you can make it to age 90, that's a very good predictor of how you're going to take care of yourself into the future. So, excellent. You ready to tally up? Who's ready to find out where we are? If you're in the audience and you've only raised your hand twice. 8 questions. If you've only raised your hand twice, for men, your average life expectancy would be expected to be 68. For women, 72. 4 times. You hit the 4 mark. Okay. Men, 77. Women, 81. 6 times. Men, 88. Women, 92. All 8 times. You hit 100%. Anyone hit 100%? Blue Zone's next centenarian right here, Cynthia Schultz. I love it. I am intrigued by this co-design opportunity. I've had an opportunity to be hearing from Cynthia for some time about this happening, this co-design commons, and it is fascinating to me because we very much do the same process with Blue Zones. Anytime that we are coming to work with a community, we are always pulling in community members to say, what does this look like for you? What is your experience in this space? How could we make it better? And we're typically doing that by looking at areas of where people connect, the places that they're connecting in, and the policies that are underlying all of those access points. And sometimes policies are very invisible. We don't even know that policy is making decisions for us, making decisions about the choices that show up for us. And so many times we are in communities that have a goal of becoming an age-friendly community. They may have a goal around disability and adjusting for that kind of environment that's friendly. But so often they can't name why something is the way it is. And we have to go back and uncover, well, why is it showing up like this? So we go into a root cause analysis, and then we say, okay, but what is the future state that we want to get to, and what are those things that we have to change along the way? And what we're always focused on with Blue Zones is how do we create environments where from a very young age to a very old age, everyone has the same accessibility, the same ability to get to and enjoy and connect to their community. And so while you're in this time this week, not only be thinking about where you are today, at whatever age you are, be thinking about what you may have needed when you're young and what you imagine you may need when you're older, so that as you're going through this design process, that you're really thinking through that lens of experience and imagining what that future stage may be. A little bit about Blue Zones, where we are today, what's going to happen, what do we bring to this? You all, I'm sure, know about the Power 9. You've probably read the books or watched the Netflix series. We have been working with Bridget and Cynthia and a few other volunteers on this Blooming Zone initiative to say, what would it mean if Bloomington became a certified city? We have about 90 cities in the U.S. that are Blue Zone certified cities. And there's a reason why there's not 200 or 300, and it's not because there's any shortage of enthusiasm, desire, alignment with values for most communities. It is because it is so hard to break through and create partnerships and create stakeholder alignment and create shared visions to make that happen. And the ones that do it well reap the rewards tremendously. And what does reaping the rewards look like? For some communities like Fort Worth, Texas, it's immense, it's huge. It's like almost 1 million people, 6 distinct districts. But if you can do a Blue Zones in Fort Worth, Texas, and have steakhouses become Blue Zones approved restaurants with healthy options on the menu, walkability, accessibility, transportation systems that support the whole community, food delivery systems that get to every person in that community, you can do it here in Bloomington. And you're most of the way there, by the way. You've got a lot of great things that are happening. But they also see a reduction in disease state, reduction in chronic disease, things like diabetes. They see an increase in people saying that they've got great community connectedness, they've got more friends. We have measured an increase in life expectancy. And we've shown that people who have communities like this, they retain their young talent, they have families that grow up there and want to stay, and they have kids that go to college somewhere else and come right back because that's a special place for them. So that's what it means to reap the rewards of becoming a certified Blue Zones community. When we think about Blue Zones, it's not that we're saying we're going to go into a community and make everyone live to age 100. That would be great, and that's one of our big, hairy, audacious goals, that we can actually get more centenarians. But what we do know is that we can help people live longer, have less disease, even the most basic things, not basic, but common, diabetes, heart disease, cardiovascular disease, depression, anxiety, and other factors, and we can give more years to their life. And that is what we are ultimately after, and we've seen that happen within just a very short amount of time. 5 years. Fort Worth was more like 7. It's a massive. Got communities in Salinas, California, 4 years, 9 months. They're already measuring that kind of impact in a very short time. When you can go to a middle school, high school, and demonstrate that by the time that kid graduates high school, they've got improved life, that's a very short turnaround. You're making lifelong impact in families' lives just from the get-go. So last thing I want to leave you with is one of the things that we measure. So we do a lot of data collection as part of Blue Zones. We partner with Gallup and the Wellbeing Index to oversample and data collect all throughout the life of a project and beyond if the community wants to continue doing that. And one of the key questions on that survey item is about life evaluation. And it's one of the most powerful predictors, very much similar to that question 8 on do you have the desire and the belief to live to age 90. Life evaluation question is one part, imagine yourself on a ladder, 0 to 10, 0 being perfectly horrible life evaluation, right? You're not happy at all, you don't want to live one more day, and 10 being the most optimal life evaluation that you can possibly imagine. You want to live another 100 years if you could have the chance. When we ask that question, and we ask it across the board, typically a community will come in at an average of around 6.2, 6.5, sometimes a little higher depending on where you are. The average for the United States is around about 6.2. The World Happiness Report uses that question as the framework for understanding where in the world countries are ranked in terms of their happiness as a population. And for the first time, the United States has fallen out of the top 20. And we've slipped again last year. We're continuing to kind of go down in terms of overall community happiness. And what they looked at is, if we go deeper into American communities and we understand what's driving this kind of life evaluation aspect, one of the things that came out in this year, I encourage you to go get the World Happiness Report, is that people are not eating meals with one another. So if you look at your opportunities to have a meal with someone, say you have 14 opportunities in a week to sit down and have a meal with a close friend, a colleague, family member, someone you've never met, Americans hit somewhere around 6 meals that they share with someone else. That leaves 8 meals they're eating alone, right? And it turns out that the more meals that you eat with somebody, the higher your life evaluation, the happier you are. And so as we think about creating an age-friendly community, you have to keep that component in mind. Where are the people that are aging in their homes that maybe don't touch or see another person? What does that mean for their longevity and their health? How do we bring people to them? How do we engage them? How do we get them out of their homes to be more part? And it's not just seniors. Think about people with disabilities. Think about young moms with babies that have children at home that they're caring for that maybe they don't see another adult face for a couple of days. These are the types of things that can actually completely transform a community. And I just wanted to highlight that as just one thing that we as Blue Zones work on. So it's not all about built environment. It's not all about food. We're not a diet and exercise company. We are truly holistically looking at well-being and want to bring great ideas to you. And so I hope you'll go look at the World Happiness Report. I hope as you're thinking through your co-design, you'll think about the human connection wherever people are and how we reach them and the systems that are doing that today. And I hope that you'll also think about the bigger picture of things. What are the metrics? Because if this is going to be a research project, what are the metrics? How do we want to measure this work to show that we're making an improvement? Blue Zones will certainly do that if we're lucky enough to be able to get this thing going, to come in and be a partner. But even as you take on this work, think about the metrics. How are you going to get the data and how we're going to show that we're making an impact? So thank you all for the time. Thank you for listening to me ramble, and I hope that can be part of this conversation for today. Thank you. I'm not sure who I'm handing it to.
I'm not sure. Let's print that.
We're being our instigator, Phil. Can you hear me okay? I'm Cynthia Schultz. I'm one of the founders of Blue Zones. I know Blue Zones. I am not the founder of Blue Zone. That would be Dan Butner and his team. Our local group is called Blooming Zone. And can you hear me okay? Okay, it is on now. Real close, real close. Okay, once again, I'm Cynthia Schultz. I'm one of the co-founders of Blooming Zone. I can get it right now. And we started about, actually back in 2023 with an idea between the two of us. And now we have more than 200, almost 250 people on our mailing list, and many others that have heard from us. And some of you are in the audience, some of you who come regularly to our monthly book club at Morgenstern. It's called the Health and Wellness Book Club. Third Monday of every month, if you haven't been before, we read health and wellness related topics. Imagine that. And so the first year we spent a lot of time reading about blue zones. And this year we moved on to some other researchers who, in fact, have underpinned the blue zones research and message so that we can get a broader look at the subcellular and physiological and medical reasons why what the blue zones propose with their 9 healthy habits, which we call the Power 9. Those current book we're reading, Longevity Solution, has a whole section on why it makes sense that the blue, yeah, there it is. The book Sandy's doing, I don't have the book here, but there it is. We're finding it challenging to read that. We've actually got some medical professionals that are helping us with that. So nobody can hear. They're telling me you can't hear. Ooh, I'm going to be kissing this mic in a minute. What we, after COVID, I don't know about this. At any rate. So I'm going to tell you, so that's our starting point, and as I said, we're getting to the point where we've got a movement. We call ourselves a tribe, which is a word that we coined from Blue Zones, and it came from this Japanese concept of moi, which is a group, a smaller group, or a bunch of little groups of kind of people that form together to a tribe. So we are so happy that you're here to hear more about what we're doing. And I'm going to ask Bridget, my co-founder, Bridget DeVault, to say a few words, and then maybe I will.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here. So I'll tell a little bit about the story of how this came about. I'll touch on that a little bit more. Some of you were at the event at Morgenstern's yesterday, so you heard this once. I'm going to share it again because a lot of you weren't there. So this came about, Cynthia and I have known each other for 14 years, maybe 15 years, and we both went to Matthew Woods at Morgenstern Books, and we told him separately, not knowing that we were interested in doing this, that we were wanting individually to start a book club, and we would like for it to be around the topic of local food, food for wellness, something around that topic. And so Matthew said to Cynthia, well, there's this other woman that wants to do the same thing that you want to do. And so so he said, Bridget DeVault, do you know her? And she happened to say yes. So I got this phone call, came up on my phone, Cynthia Schultz, and I own a hair salon. I'm a local entrepreneur, and I haven't been doing hair, but I have a group of stylists that are my employees. So I thought when I saw her name come up that she was calling to complain about a haircut. And so I was like, oh gosh, who cut her hair? What happened? And so so it happened to be that she had all of this enthusiasm over the phone, and I was having sort of a hard day, and I was like, oh my God, okay, Cynthia, let me think about this, let me process this. But then I called her back about a week later, and I said, really what I want to do is something centered around blue zones. I've been fascinated by the research. It's been inspiring my own life. For a long time, I thought of health and wellness to be purely about eating healthy and how I move my body, showing up at the gym. And then I learned from the Blue Zones and from the 9 Lessons for Living Longer that there's a lot more to health than the food that we eat. and how we move our bodies. I learned that developing a sense of purpose, developing systems in your life for evaluating stress and stress reduction was huge, and I needed that in the biggest way. So a big part of my journey with Blue Zones is learning these things, and that this book was a part of it. So about a week later, I showed up at her house with, I'm a book nerd and I collect a lot of books. So I showed up with all the Blue Zones books that I owned, left them at her doorstep, and then she called back and said, yeah, let's do it. So then another part of who both of us are is we both are kind of ambitious. We don't always think before we move into something big. I said, let me just email Blue Zones and see if we could actually create a certification here, because who better to do it than the two of us? So so that week we emailed and then called. We got a Zoom call, and then we were so excited. And this is all about lifelong learning. I know nothing about being a part of something like this, but the whole process for the past 2 years has been amazing. This has come at a time when I've really needed sort of a new purpose in my life. I'm 47 years old. I was going through a divorce. I lost my dad, all these things. And so now I have this new sense of community. I'm connecting with people on topics of wellness, and it's helping me as I move into these years, moving into my 50s, 60s, you know, hopefully 80s, 90s. And I'm just so grateful. I'm grateful for everyone that shows up to the book clubs. I'm so grateful for Margaret. This is the 5th event in the past 36 hours that we've been a part of, so I'm tired and I'm running off of adrenaline, and I just want to thank everyone for being here. And also just like thank you to our volunteers are amazing. So thank you for being here, and I'm going to stop talking now and hand it back over to Cynthia.
Well, it's really good that when I was in retirement and decided I needed a kind of a capstone project for my old age, that I had Bridget in my fun fan group. She has been invaluable to me because she's still young and wise enough that she is always saying, now just wait a minute, let's think this through. And so it is true, we bit off a project that none of us could have ever imagined. And I've said this week several times, this is an example to be careful what you wish for, because we had no more faith that this would happen than anybody. It's been really an amazing journey. And with that in mind, I would like to put a finer point on the five venues that we've been at in the last 36 hours. I counted last night, and by the time we're through today, we will have seen more than 100 different people during that 36 hours. And so I think, you know, that, and many of these people that we've seen, some of you in this room, we've never seen at an event before. And that says a lot about our community and what we value and what we will show up for and take our time for. So you mean everything to us, you really do. In your folder, one of our volunteers who's not with us, Landry Culp, you'll see under her name that Landry is our data analyst and our reporting person, strategic. She keeps our data, she wrote our annual report, which is available online. And she put together this flyer, which is basically highlights the things that are in the report through 2024. This data here you see on this flyer is through the end of last year, and we've made, you know, almost another quarter here. Oh, more than another quarter we finished, and that has not been added in. But it does give you an idea of how small our organization is. The leadership team is just what you see there, 5 people. We do everything from marketing to event planning to data analysis, strategic planning,
And one of my favorite things, and one of Bridget's favorite things, are the hands-on cooking classes. How many people have taken one of those classes? Yeah. The best thing, the best $20 you'll ever invest in your life, you get to learn, well, it's been $20 so far. It may be free in the future. But since you're looking at the funding sources right here until just recently, yeah, we had to ask for a donation to cover the cost of the food because, as you all know, healthy food is expensive, right? Especially fresh healthy foods is expensive. So we would buy farm fresh vegetables and organic nuts and grains, and we took most of our recipes out of a book that's available for you to look through, and it's a pretty funny story about the book. It's called Blue Zone's Kitchen. It's on the table out in the other room, and if you look at it, you're going to see it's very beat up. The book belonged to Bridget to begin with. Excuse me. She lent it to me. I dropped it. I busted the cover off of it, so I went and got some really nice binding tape, blue binding tape, and I fixed it, and then I looked at it, and I can't give this back to her. So, but she said, yeah, it would have been fine. But you know, I was raised Catholic. I just couldn't do that. I'd have too much guilt. So I went and bought her another book and kept it, and I'm so happy because by now, it looks like you could boil it and eat it if you ever were in a famine. It's got food dripped all over it. It's got scraps of papers inside. It's got little notes. So I've cleaned it up as best I can. It's on the table in there because it's an artifact at this point. But at any rate, we love the cooking classes, and we're really hoping we can do more of those in the future because the other point about them is you cook, it's hands-on cooking, you get the recipe, you get a reference to any of the background information, like where you can purchase some like maybe a juniper berry, where do you get those things, right? And so what we did was we prepared the food, and then guess what? We ate it. So you would come to a class, you'd spend 2 hours, you'd learn to make something, you'd either eat with us or take home leftovers. I mean, it's not, yeah. The connection part, of course, is vital, and we've met many people that are friends of mine now. Sure, I can name many people in this room that they were here in Bloomington. I didn't know her. She's a gem, by the way. Just a great, we call ourselves BZIers, Blooming Zone Initiativers, BZIers. So she's one of our favorites, as if we have favorites, right? But at any rate, this goes through we prepared this so you get an idea of what we've accomplished in the last year. And the Co-Design Commons, this is a really good piece. It wasn't, you know how it is when you're trying to accomplish something, you've got your blinders on, you really can't tell a person what you're doing, you know what you're doing, but what we're doing is kind of hard to explain. It's not like anything that you could say, oh, it's like, you know, we're going to do this like a conference, or we're going to do this like a book club. It's not, it's so many different things, and it has so many different outcomes and benefits that it's hard to explain. So we've had a little bit of a hard time getting our elevator speech down, and I was so glad when Drew Pickett, who's in the room, he's around here somewhere, he's a really good-looking guy with a navy blue coat. He is part of our new resources from the university. We've heard before that we've been recently got funding to rent this space, to put this program on, to put the programs on we're going to put on every Friday from now until the end of the year. And he wrote this document, and I thought, oh, yeah, that's what I've been meaning to say. So that's a good, it's a very good summary of what we're up to, kind of a long range. The only other thing that I wanted to mention in here is that, what is it here? Oh, yeah. You'll hear more about this later on, but you remember, you heard someone mention, oh, it's Phil this morning. Yeah, this is Phil. Mentioned that we're going to have a series that's funded by the Indiana Arts Commission. Now, there's very few places. I think I just vacated my place because I'm going to go and go to the beach with my grandchildren and look at my feet and watch them play. So I was registered. I think there's one or more places left in this one, but there's a waiting list for the next one. This is cool stuff. So take a look at that. It's Blooming Wise. That's with our educational art series. And we got all these blooming things happen, right? So we're Blooming Zone, and Julie in Indian Outdoors Kitchen is Blooming Wise, and this is Blooming Work. We're kind of crafting a brand here. Can you tell? And so there's a sign-up sheet for future. We're hoping to fund more of these. They're not inexpensive to put on. There's only 12 people per class, once a week, for a couple hours on a Friday afternoon. And you'll see some of the work that was done in the pilot in the back room, and you'll hear about it later. But during lunch, which is coming up, we want you to walk around, go into that little room back there by the bathroom. That's where the art room is normally, and look on the table, and you can get some ideas about the artifacts we've crafted in the pilot project that started in February and ends today because this is official launch to the public. There was just 20 or so of us that participated on Fridays, and it was a highlight of my week. I would tell somebody want to meet with me, say, oh no, I got to go do artwork and play with my friends. So I'm going to turn it back over to Bridget. There's probably many things I'm forgetting to tell you about, but I'll let her wrap up so we can move on to the next task.
No, I think you covered a lot. I always like at our book club sessions and workshops, I like to open up, just ask all of you that are here if you have any questions, thoughts that you'd like to share about what we're doing, Blooming Zones. I can't speak for the Co-Design Commons piece if you have questions, but I'd like to connect with all of you if you have any questions.
Know more about.
Stacy.
I think you've explained this to me before, but what will it take for Bloomington to be a blue zone? Do you need the amount of people or funding, or what is it going to take, and how close are you?
Well, I wish Mark was in the room right now because this is really, Daphne, do you see her? Where did she go up to? Tell her this is really a good question. And it's so good that one of my faculty advisors from when I was in graduate school asked it last night, and I made all the people, the decision makers that were in the room, come for a pre-15-minute conference. So Tom Duffy asked that same question. This is a great question, and it's not an easy answer. And I'm going to ask Margaret, it happened again. Tom Duffy's question, one you briefed the mayor on, has just been asked. What's going to happen next?
What will it take, or did you say what the question was? Do we need a following, a number of people, or a funding, amount of funding? What would it take?
Yeah.
Because I think that in this community, I've been here 53 years.
Can you repeat the question?
What is it going to take?
Yeah, it's people want it.
Yeah, people do want it. I've talked a little bit about a couple of things. One, we'll get to the process of creating a shared community vision. That kind of happens along the way. But I think the second thing is, who can fund this? And I know, just talking to people like, oh, so-and-so probably has a grant. We can pull funding from this organization or that organization. It needs to be a little bit broader than that, because one, you don't want it to be strictly philanthropy, right? Philanthropy you can get in fits and starts. You're going to fund something this year, maybe it's not there next year. Secondly, the cross-sector nature of this work, you want to be embedded within all work sites, where people are spending their time, all schools, where kids are spending their time, all health system, college, everyone needs to be on board, and therefore, for those organizations that are going to reap especially the benefit of this Blue Zones initiative, they should be at the table and be a part funder, because it's part of their strategy and will benefit them. So the typical funders for a Blue Zones project, I'm not going to say that there's not unique differences in every community, but typically you're going to have folks like corporate, you're going to have health system, health plan, you're going to have some foundation dollars, and you're going to have some kind of just sponsorship dollars that are philanthropy, but the bulk of it needs to be tied to a greater strategy so that those organizations have buy-in They're going to be committed. They're going to follow through, because we could do all the great work in the neighborhoods. We could do all the great work with the people that are activated. But ultimately, your goal is to make the healthy choice the easy choice. And whether you know anything about blue zones or not, think about the average student coming into IU freshman year. Is it really going to be bought into what the city's doing for 4 years for blue zones? But the benefit should be reaped whether they know anything about it at all. So the concept of the environment having the greatest impact, if we can change and optimize the environment, every person, no matter where they live, what their capacity is for understanding or knowing or engaging, should benefit from this project. And therefore, we have to get to the broadest stakeholder list that we can. And I go right back to work sites, schools, corporate partners, where people are spending their time in those environments.
Randy, do you mind coming up here for a moment? So one really exciting thing to play off of that is that we just received the opportunity to work with United Way. This is a big deal. We're really excited. So they're our fiscal sponsor, and I'd love for Randy. Randy's been at all 5 of our events too. So thank you so much for your time these last 2 days. So I'd love for you to share a little bit.
I appreciate it. As was said, I'm Randy Rogers. I'm President and CEO of United Way of South Central Indiana. We cover a 6-county area here in South Central, down to Lawrence and Orange, Greene, Owen, Monroe, and Brown. Why, one of the questions is, why did we get involved? There's a couple of reasons. One, we do act as fiscal sponsors. That means we're the 501c3. The organization doesn't really need to become a 501c3, so you can make a tax-deductible donation to the organization at any point in time, and we can fulfill that role for the organization. But more importantly than that, that's the logistics, kind of behind the scenes. That's just one of those things that happen. What is more important to us, one of United Way's pillar efforts in a community is a healthy community. It means a lot of things to a lot of different people, but a healthy community is really key. It aligns perfectly with what is happening in the blue zones. When I say a healthy community, that's healthy community and healthy access for everyone in that community. So yes, we do some programmatic work for those folks that are in poverty or really challenged. But we also do a lot of work for, and our primary focus is work for working families. So what does that mean? Well, working families, and again, fitting it in with the Blue Zones initiative, working families need access to good food. And you can, if you've had children or if you've had a family in the busy life and times of a family, drive-through is a really easy thing to do when you've got kids going in different directions or grandkids going in directions. How do we make other options available for people? You're working and working 2 jobs. Both parents are working. If you have both parents, how do you make that work for your kids? How do we create that sustainability at an early age so they know when they do come here to college, they've already got that trainer, or in this case, if they go away to somewhere else, they already know what they're looking for. So United Way is really excited to be a part of this. And I think it fits really closely with the work that's happening. I know they talked a little bit about funding, and we'll be intricately involved in the funding process. And last thing I'll say is that it's really important to think about partners when we do this. This is not an effort that just those in the room can do, those of us standing up here can do. Every organization that's out there that you volunteer for, maybe you have parents that live at one of the senior living facilities. I mean, all of those are going to come into play across the board here. So I encourage you to be thinking creatively about what that looks like as we move forward. Yes, the accreditation process is first. That will give us a blueprint for where we go. We do have to raise the money to do the accreditation process, but that will give us that blueprint for where do we go and what do we need. We have so much in this community already. We are so lucky that I think, we were talking earlier, and I think that, if the accreditation process is 100 questions, it wouldn't surprise me that we're already at 60 of those, right? Because this is such a thriving community. But that'll tell us where we need to go. And that's when all of you will really kick in. We'll need that support. So hang with us through this process. So, question?
Do you have any plans to encourage community and government support for urban farmers and have more increased access to urban farmers, and also to allow urban farmers to teach us how to have small little plots in our backyards? We do have an urban farmer here in Bloomington that would like to increase access to her urban farm and teach, but she needs support.
Allie Spear.
Yeah.
Allie, yeah, we spent some time with her this morning, and she's fascinating. I love her, and what she's doing is just amazing. And another thing that most communities across the United States do not have an alley that just is bulldozing through all kinds of things to make that possible. Absolutely. So when we talk about the assessment process, we're looking at what are all the things that are strengths. Alley in that program is a strength. All of the small farms that are getting their start in and around or adjacent to Bloomington are a strong asset. The question is, how do we take what they're doing and amplify it? I go back to the Fort Worth discussion that we talked about earlier. 6 distinct neighborhoods, essentially. And we created a process by which, because it's so big, we had to treat each one of those neighborhoods as unique and unto themselves to do this work. But as Allie was talking this morning about her urban farm and working in the neighborhood level, I could imagine that something being spread throughout Bloomington as an initiative, both of the city, her nonprofit, in those neighborhoods, and an alliance to kind of make that a permanent part. That's just one idea that if I were sitting here doing the assessment today and I'm hearing of strengths, okay, how do we then make that spread and give it lift? And that's really the work of Blue Zones. It's like we would come in with a team to help amplify that. And some of the problem with that is going to be we're going to have to change policy, going to have to identify land, do remediation in some cases, find funds to build out the physical spaces for that, all the things that Allie's done for her neighborhood, but now it's going to take that times whatever the number is across the whole of Bloomington. And so that's where the Blue Zones team would come in, help do that work on the ground to help build that. So I'm not committing to that because it's a whole community process, but that's an example of what we would recommend based on the strength that we identify.
And that'll be one of the things that'll be really important as we go forward too, as we talk about that blueprint. Maybe that is one that rises to the top, but maybe it's one that's maybe the next level, right? Maybe it's not what we tackle first. Part of it will be funding. What can we get funded first? What are those things we can do there? So. Barry.
So a comment and then a question. So Monroe County through the Purdue Extension offers a master gardening class, about a third, half of which focuses on vegetable gardening. So I think that would address some of the questions in the education aspect. Very, very good. So I would highly recommend that as one thing that we could advocate for people to do. And secondly, the question is related to the benchmarks, which would involve both Blooming Works and Blooming Zone and Blue Zone. And the goal, as I see it here, is to embed the ability to live a happy and healthy life in Bloomington and around the world, right? So I'm really curious about what those benchmarks are that we need to accede to kind of move in this direction.
Yeah, so there is certification criteria, and it could be a longer conversation. I'm gonna try to make it brief. The first pass is, I mentioned Gallup Wellbeing, the index, the survey that they take. The first pass is the community, the organizers that are helping to build the blueprint, make the plan, select, and everybody's gonna be invited to do it, select the top strategies, you've got an index of items that you can choose from. You're gonna choose probably 13 metrics off of that first thing from the Gallup. And the reason why we use Gallup is because we can deploy that survey quickly, we can get answers back quickly, and we can repeat it year over year to ensure that we're not having latent data, right? The second thing is you're gonna pick community-based metrics. What are the metrics based on what we identify as the top strategies that are gonna be most important to the community from the data sources that you're already collecting? So in some communities, that's data that comes from the city. So it could be something like the number of unhoused individuals, the number of new housing units that are available for people to move into. It could be something like the number of high school graduation folks, graduation rates. There's hundreds of metrics that you can choose from. The point being is what's important to the community, data that you can capture and measure, and it may be coming through public health, it may be coming through the state, it may be coming through the city. We'll get to that, but that's where you're gonna select probably 8 metrics there. It's dependent on the size of the community, size of the plan, et cetera. The final thing is you also have to demonstrate sort of in the process of things that you've met a tipping point of change. So we both are looking at the data and the outcomes, but we know what drives the data and the outcomes, and that's gonna be, did you get all the schools on board? Is the superintendent on board, and does 50% of all the schools throughout the scoped area doing the work of blue zones, and do they become approved? They have to meet what's called approved status, which is a whole nother set of metrics to get there. Workforce. 25% of all workforce for the entire city would have to be touched by a blue zones where they work. So we normally start with the largest employers, but it doesn't mean they're exclusive. Small employers across the board can participate to become an approved employer, meaning they met a tipping point of change within their organization to receive that designation. We would also work across the entire population. So not just workforce now, the broader population. A total 15% of individuals living here in Bloomington would have to participate, and there's criteria to determine participation. And 15. And it seems like a low number, and most communities do exceed that metric. It's only one metric. We've talked about raising the threshold, but there are other communities for which that would be an unfair thing to attain to. So, but when you put that in the mix of all the other things, that's what you're driving towards. And then finally, you would also be looking at your restaurants, grocery stores. They have to also become blue zones approved. And there's, churches can participate, other types of civic organizations. But that is kind of the matrix of the metrics that underlie the certification process.
So that sounds like it focuses mainly on the wellness side of things, but happiness is another element that's
It's in there.
And how does that get measured?
So when I talk about the well-being index, it's such an important question. The well-being index is made up of 5 I guess you say indices across of that. So one of them being community. Do you have pride in your community? Do you like where you live? Relationships are what we call social. Do you have love in your life and friendship? Financial. That is not about how much money you make, but how do you manage the money that you have to increase security and reduce stress? So we often find that even very high achieving folks that make decent salaries or higher can be incredibly stressed because they're living paycheck to paycheck too. They've been overinvested in some cases or overbought or whatever the thing may be. So when we look at financial wellness, the other thing that we look at is really happiness, like life evaluation, purpose, your purpose score. And what's wrapped up in that is, do I like what I do? Do I like what I get up and do every day? Where's my life evaluation? I talked about that question from 0 to 10. We measure it. It's in that question set under purpose. And then, of course, physical. What are all the physical attributes that a person has? Either previously diagnosed things, weight, what you eat, exercise, how do you sleep? All of those are backed in. So all of those components together make up the well-being index. Hope that's helpful.
Thank you. Thank you.
We've lunch is about ready, so we've got a couple questions. Wendy, you first.
You had mentioned a couple of times about fundraising.
Yes.
What's the formal process? How do we, as individuals who apply, how do we make a donation?
We take cash, check.
Our firstborn child.
Is it to United Way?
I will, let me give an example. There's always individuals that would like to make a donation. I would suggest 2 things. Other United Ways have set up a fund where people who want to give to keep this kind of process going, to help Bridget and Cynthia and all the volunteers to continue doing this, because it doesn't happen without some expense. You've seen all of the events this week, the food that's been put out, the time that these ladies are putting in, that does have a cost. The second tier of fundraising is we will be setting up a small group after this that of folks like Randy, a few others who have volunteered and said, I've got connections with corporate entities, and we would be willing to put together a plan and go and make the ask. Because that's going to be what carries us through both the feasibility study that we're up against next and the bigger 5-year vision that we're focused on. So that is going to start with this small group that we'll put together right after that. And then, of course, other communities, I'm thinking of one just not too far from you all in Missouri that had the idea of putting together a fund. Think of it as, you know, if any of you are familiar with the community foundation model, they put together a fund, and they had philanthropists in the community that wanted to make a significant donation to that fund, and they wanted to have their name as contributors, the name of their group, as a logo, as a present on all of the Blue Zones initiatives. So, you know, Living Well Fayette is one that we've worked with. They pooled their dollars together, created a logo, and wanted to be known as that entity that is represented as part of the Blue Zones infrastructure now and going forward. So I you know, that may be a strategy that we could talk about as well if there's significant interest in that.
I was gonna say we had 2 questions here. We can do you first,
Well,
then you, and then if we're quick.
I just was curious in the funding part of it, and also I guess the approval of organizations and things. Does that, like say a funding, a corporate funding, and I assume they're approved, they could be approved too, do they get to be labeled as a Blue Zone entity? So they get that also, they are Blue Zone certified, so
Yes.
groceries or any of these other things that donate and help fund it.
So I would say funding is not tied to the approval process. The reason why we raise money at the level that we do is so that everything extended to the community is at no additional cost. So the process for schools or restaurants or grocery stores or employers to become approved does not cost them anything. We're just asking them to take the pledge and do the work. And that, because we do not want money to be a barrier. That is why we fundraise, hire the local team. We also don't want time to be, we don't want a school to say, we would do it, but we don't have an extra resource to do this work. So we hire a team. That team is also paid for out of the funding to go and do this work every day to support the work sites, the schools, the restaurants, the grocery stores, to drive engagement, run the programs, coordinate the volunteers, all of that. But it's an important point that you raised, because a small grocer or a small food co-op or a small food hub, which I would say is like the farm stop, they're not going to have the extra funds to pay us to do this. They're going to get to do that for no extra cost.
So could they put, like they are a Blue Zone approved?
Yes, they would get a logo, they can put it on their door, they can put it on their website, etc. Yes.
2 last questions.
Hi, thank you for this. I just wanted to, I was lucky to be in a group last Friday, and we talked about livable communities, and I've been researching that for the past week, and age-friendly communities are attainable, and this dovetails perfectly with what you all have been working hard at. And I would just really love to have a chance to pursue that with this group, and because, you know, everything you're talking about, happiness, loneliness, I work with older adults, and I would be so very honored to be a part of getting the certification for Bloomington, who is so close to this, across the finish line.
So I want to address that really quick. One of the things I've picked up on at United Way, I've been there about 2.5 years now, but I've been in the community since '95, is that there are a lot of fantastic efforts. And the beauty of Bloomington is, if you want to tackle something, somebody's going to stand up and tackle it, and that's fantastic. one of the roles that we will play in this, that United Way will play in this, it's really important, is we can bring all of these entities together. Because we all are working towards the same thing. They will all count towards something. Is Blue Zone the top? Is livable communities the top? I don't know we know the answer to that yet, but they all fit together. So it'll be really important that those partnerships and that collaboration is there, and that you're not running over here, we're running over here. That's what we don't want to be doing.
Margaret, you brought so much new information to me today about the national organization that I didn't understand. I read the books, the Blue Zone books, but how do we find out more? Is it all on your website? If we want to learn about these criteria and learn about the 90 other cities that have been certified?
There's a lot of information online, for sure. I can also pull some resources together and put them in Bridget and Cynthia's hands so they can share that out, both in terms of digital links, et cetera, to point you directly to where you need to go. And then I will share, especially the certification criteria that may not be on the website. I'll get that in your hands as well, so that you can read through that and see it in a more in-depth way.
Can you give an example of maybe 5 other cities
Yeah.
that are outstanding?
Yeah, I'm gonna pick Petaluma, California, because what you said, they're also going for age-friendly and livable, and they're doing Blue Zones, and they're kind of created a structure where they're gonna attain all 3 of those essentially at the same time. They've got excellent examples of that. Jacksonville, Florida, very big city. We're working in 3 zip codes of Jacksonville, Florida, where they've had the highest gang violence, lowest income status, et cetera. That is 2 years in on that project. Phenomenal outcomes. Just a remarkable community there. They've done a whole lot around financial wellness, housing, senior living, et cetera, all in that space. Another one that has just kicked off, probably the closest I'm thinking to where you all are right now, is Allentown, Pennsylvania. Allentown has 3 communities, Allentown, Eastman, and Bethlehem, that are all going through the Blue Zones work right now. I'm trying to think of others that might be near Minnesota. I'm sorry, yeah, Albert Lee, Minnesota is the first, but over in Michigan, we actually have a smaller project in a very rural county called Berry County, Michigan, and they've done quite a phenomenal amount of work. I could probably go on, but for every community that's met certification, this is also an important thing. There are some communities that aren't moving to certification. They just want to do work in food, or they just want to do work in built environment, or people engagement. We probably have 200 more communities that are just focused on a particular area and not going for certification. But I could provide you many communities that are in the midst of that.
So to wrap up, everybody needs fuel, nutrition, right? We are very grateful to One World Catering for our vegetarian lunch. Probably the biggest complaint people have said to me when I've invited them to join the Blue Zones, oh no, I'm not going to give up my meat. And so I don't want you to go away with the idea that one of the principles of Blue Zones is to not eat meat. It's to reduce the amount of meat you eat and increase the amount of vegetables, fruit, and grains, and nuts. So when I was asked to create a menu, I am a chef. I picked what I thought that most people would like, so I hope you enjoy it. And we will be breaking at noon and reconvening at 1 o'clock for the Co-Design Commons practice, our workshop, and which Phil Stafford and Julie Hill will lead this afternoon. And I know some of you students have a meeting with your teacher who is in the back of the room. You're welcome and encouraged, please, we have plenty of food, to get a to-go box, which someone will get for you. I know where they are. Blooming Foods, in addition to donating the morning breakfast and the coffee bar, some things on the coffee bar, I asked for to-go containers. They're environmentally friendly. So I hope you enjoy lunch, and I want to thank Randy Rogers and also our guest speaker for being here today, and my hello, my friend and co-founder, my wonderful wingman, Bridget, as well, for Daphne back there. Daphne, hold your hand up. Daphne is on our leadership team, and there's another person who's not here today, Mary Cunieris. As I said, we've had 7 events or 5 events and 98 people, so some of us are pretty worn out, and I want to thank them too as well. We're ready for lunch now. Phil, is there anything else? Thank you.